Russia is so large that when the sun rises over its eastern shores, it is still the day before in the west. It spans 11 time zones, 2 continents, and nearly twice the land area of any other country on Earth. But here is what most people never realize. Russia's size is not just its greatest strength, it is also its greatest weakness. And to understand why, we have to look at the map, not the way a tourist sees it, but the way a general does. Russia covers more than 17 million square kilometers. That is larger than the entire surface of the planet Pluto. You could fit the United States inside it and still have room left over for India and most of Western Europe. From one end to the other, a single train journey takes nearly a full week. Almost 100 cities, and never once leaving the same country. So how did one nation come to control this much of the planet? And why has that size haunted it for centuries? The story begins not with armies, but with fur. In the late 1500s, Russia was a modest kingdom centered on Moscow. Then, traders and Cossacks began pushing east, across the Ural Mountains, chasing the pelts of sable and fox, and there was almost nothing to stop them. Within about 60 years, Russia had reached the Pacific Ocean, more than 6,000 kilometers away. A kingdom built around a single city had become the largest land empire the world had ever seen. But the land they gained was not a gift. It was a burden in disguise. But conquering land is one thing, holding it together is another. Picture a country so wide that when officials in Moscow sit down for breakfast, people on the Pacific coast are already going to sleep. For most of Russian history, a single message from the capital could take weeks to reach the Far East. To bind this giant together, Russia built the longest railway on the planet, the trans-Siberian. Over 9,000 kilometers of track, the steel spine of the nation. But a single spine, for the largest country on Earth, is a fragile thing. And it hints at a deeper truth. Everything about Russia's size that looks like power comes with a hidden price. Look closely at Western Russia, and you will notice something dangerous. It is flat. The great European plain runs from France all the way to the Ural Mountains. No mountains, no deserts, almost no natural barrier to stop an advancing army. Twice in modern history, this flat corridor was used to invade Russia, by Napoleon in 1812 and by Nazi Germany in 1941. Both drove deep into Russian soil before the winter and the sheer distance turned them back. This one fact, an open and undefendable border, has shaped Russian thinking for centuries. Because in geography, when you cannot build a wall, you buy space. And space is the one thing Russia has always had. Now look at Russia's coastline. It is one of the longest on Earth, and yet, for most of its history, much of it was almost useless. The problem is ice. Nearly all of Russia's great ports freeze for months each year, locking its navy and its trade behind walls of frozen sea. A true world power needs warm water ports, harbors that stay open all year and reach the open ocean. Russia has spent 3 centuries fighting wars and signing treaties just to secure them, from the Black Sea to the Pacific. And this is not ancient history. That same search still drives Russian strategy today. A nation ringed by frozen coastlines is, in a strange way, a landlocked giant. And here is something most people never notice. Look at Russia's greatest rivers, the Ob, the Yenisei, the Lena, among the longest in the world, but they all flow the wrong way. Instead of carrying trade toward warm seas and busy harbors, they flow north into the frozen Arctic, where the water is locked in ice for much of the year. And the mighty Volga, the longest river in Europe, flows south into the Caspian, a sea with no natural path to the ocean at all. In America, in Germany, great rivers became highways of trade and wealth. In Russia, geography turned its rivers into roads that lead almost nowhere. And then there is the East. Siberia. It makes up nearly 3/4 of Russia's territory, and yet only about 1/5 of its people live there. The reason is simple. It is one of the harshest places on Earth. Much of the ground is permafrost, soil frozen all year, where building a road, a pipeline, or a city is a constant fight. Temperatures can drop below -50 degrees, so while Russia looks enormous on the map, the truth is that most of its people are pressed into the warmer western fifth of the country. The rest is vast, frozen, and almost empty. And that emptiness is spreading. People are leaving. For decades, Russians have drifted away from the cold and the distance of Siberia, moving toward the warmer, richer cities of the West. Whole regions of the East now hold just a handful of people per square kilometer, some of the emptiest inhabited land on the planet. And just across the border lie some of the most crowded nations on Earth, a giant, almost empty frontier sitting beside packed neighbors. For a country that has always feared its borders, that is a quiet unease that geography alone created. And this is the great paradox of Russian geography. Beneath Siberia lies some of the largest reserves of oil, gas, timber, and metal on Earth. On paper, this is staggering wealth. But in reality, much of it sits thousands of kilometers from any market, in places so cold and so remote that pulling it from the ground costs a fortune. Every pipeline, every railway, every city in the Russian East is a battle against distance and cold. The very size that makes Russia powerful also makes it punishingly expensive to hold together. So is Russia's size a strength or a weakness? The honest answer is both. Its vast distances have swallowed entire invading armies and handed it resources beyond measure. But those same distances drain its economy, scatter its people, and leave it haunted by a border it can never truly close. Russia did not become big by accident. It grew because for centuries size felt like safety. And the deep irony is this: the very thing built for protection became its heaviest chain. Geography gave Russia a continent and a problem it has never